The smell of burnt sugar filled the small bakery kitchen. Lena Hart sighed as she pulled the tray of pastries from the oven, another batch ruined. The timer had gone off while she'd been staring blankly at her phone, rereading the same message for the 10th time. "You deserve better, Lena. I'm sorry." Those were the last words her fiancé, Eric, had sent before blocking her. That was 6 months ago, and still the words felt like a bruise that refused to fade. Now, her career was barely holding together. She had been a pastry chef at one of the best restaurants in the city, but after the breakup, she'd quit, unable to face the gossip and pitying looks. The bakery she worked in now paid the bills, barely. Every day felt like wading through thick mud, exhausting and slow, with no clear way forward. She set the ruined pastries on the counter and stared at them. "Burnt again," a voice called from behind her. Lena turned to see Maya, her best friend and roommate, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of coffee and a raised eyebrow. "I got distracted," Lena said. "By what? Your sad playlist or that same text message again?" Maya crossed her arms. "Lena, it's been half a year. You've got to let that man rot in peace." Lena forced a smile. "I'm trying." "No, you're surviving," Maya said, stepping closer. "There's a difference." She plucked a burnt pastry off the tray and bit into it anyway. "Crispy," she said through a mouthful. "But seriously, you need a night out. Get out of this kitchen. Out of your head." "I can't. I have to work early tomorrow." "Not anymore," Maya said, grinning. "Because I already called in for you." "What?" "I said you had a family emergency." "Which isn't a total lie, I'm your chosen family, and I'm having a social emergency." Lena groaned. "Maya. Don't argue. You're coming with me tonight. There's a charity art auction at the Westmore Gallery. My boss gave me 2 invites. It's black tie, so dress like you belong to the 1%. "I can't go to something like that," Lena said, wiping her hands on her apron. "I don't even own anything that fancy." Maya smiled like a cat who'd already caught the mouse. "Good thing I do." That evening, Lena stood in front of their mirror, barely recognizing herself. The black gown Maya had lent her hugged her figure perfectly, simple, elegant, with a low back that made her skin prickle. Her dark hair, usually tied back for work, now fell in soft waves over her shoulders. "You look like a movie star," Maya said, adjusting one of Lena's earrings. "Now remember, shoulders back, head high. You belong anywhere you walk into." "I'll try not to trip over my own feet," Lena muttered. Maya grinned. "Confidence, girl. Men smell insecurity like sharks smell blood." As they rode in the cab toward the city's art district, Lena stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur into streaks of gold. She hadn't been anywhere fancy in months. The idea of being surrounded by wealth, by people who had never once worried about rent or overdue bills, made her stomach twist. But something in Maya's excitement softened her resistance. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to pretend, just for one night, that she wasn't a struggling chef with a broken heart. The Westmore Gallery gleamed like a palace of glass and gold. Inside, everything sparkled: chandeliers, crystal flutes of champagne, the jewelry on women who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. Waiters in crisp uniforms glided between guests carrying trays of canapés that probably cost more than Lena's weekly grocery bill. "I feel like I'm trespassing," Lena whispered. "Then trespass with confidence," Maya said, handing her a glass of champagne. "Drink up." The champagne was too sweet, the bubbles sharp on her tongue. Around her, people laughed in low, practiced tones, names dropping like currency. Lena stood near a marble pillar, pretending to study a painting of swirling gold and black, when a man's voice behind her said, "You're looking at it upside down." Lena turned, startled. The man was tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that looked custom-made. His hair was dark, his jaw sharp, his eyes gray, cool, and unreadable. There was something effortless about him, the kind of confidence that came from knowing the world bent for you. "It's abstract," Lena said, flustered. "I don't think there's a right way up." He smiled faintly. "True. But you'd be surprised how many people pretend to understand what they don't." His voice was deep, smooth, and controlled, the kind that could talk someone into or out of anything. "I'm Dominic," he said, extending a hand. Dominic Vale. She hesitated before taking it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not rough. Lena Hart, she replied. Are you an artist, Miss Hart? She shook her head quickly. A baker. Well, pastry chef. Kind of. I work at a bakery downtown. It's not exactly glamorous. Glamour is overrated, he said. Substance isn't. Their eyes met, and for a moment, it felt like the noise of the gallery faded. His gaze was steady, curious, almost too focused. Lena felt suddenly self-conscious, as if he could see past her dress, past her polite smile, right into the chaos she hid inside. She began, but someone called his name from across the room. Excuse me, he said, his attention snapping back to her for a beat. Enjoy the evening, Miss Hart. And just like that, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Lena exhaled, not realizing she'd been holding her breath. Maya appeared moments later, eyes wide. Was that Dominic Vale? You know him? Everyone knows him, Maya whispered. He's the owner of Vale Holdings, hotels, shipping, art, tech, you name it. Half the city owes him something. And you were just talking to him like he's a regular guy. Lena frowned, watching the spot where he'd disappeared. He seemed normal. Maya laughed. That man hasn't been normal a day in his life. By the end of the night, Lena was exhausted. Maya had vanished with a group of marketing executives, leaving her to sip the last of her champagne alone. She set the empty glass on a passing tray and turned toward the exit, and that's when it happened. A waiter carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres turned suddenly, and she walked right into him. The tray crashed to the floor, scattering food everywhere. The room went silent for half a second. Heat rushed to Lena's face. I'm so sorry, she gasped, kneeling to help, but before she could reach for the scattered canapes, a familiar voice said, Careful. You'll ruin your dress. She looked up. Dominic Vale stood over her, holding out his hand. Mortified, she took it. He pulled her up effortlessly, his touch firm and steady. It's okay, he said, his lips curving into a slight smile. No harm done. Except my dignity, Lena muttered. That can be repaired, he said lightly. With another drink, perhaps. She blinked. You're offering me a drink after I nearly destroyed your gala? I admire bold entrances, he said, leading her toward the bar. Most people spend the whole night trying to be invisible. You managed to command attention in 10 seconds. I wasn't trying to, she said, half laughing. Exactly. At the bar, Dominic ordered for both of them without asking. She should have been annoyed, but somehow, the confidence in his tone made it sound less like arrogance and more like inevitability. When the drinks arrived, champagne for him, a soft amber cocktail for her, he said, to accidental chaos. She raised her glass, amused. Is that something you toast often? Only when it leads to interesting company. She took a sip. The drink was smooth, a little spicy. You're good at this, she said. At what? Making people feel like they're the only person in the room. He tilted his head, eyes glinting. Only when they are. Her heartbeat stumbled. She looked away, trying to find something clever to say, but her mind blanked. Around them, people drifted in and out of conversation, but Dominic remained perfectly still, composed, observant. Do you always watch people this closely? She asked. Only when they fascinate me, he said simply. Lena laughed nervously. You must say that to a lot of women. I don't waste words I don't mean. The way he said it, calm, unhurried, utterly certain, sent a chill through her. Before she could respond, a man in a dark suit approached and murmured something in Dominic's ear. His expression didn't change, but Lena saw the subtle shift in his posture, a flicker of alertness, like a predator scenting movement. Excuse me a moment, he said, standing. Don't leave just yet. And then he was gone again. When Maya returned, she found Lena staring at the half-empty glass. You okay? I think I just had the strangest conversation of my life, Lena said. With Dominic Vale. Lena nodded slowly. His, intense. Dangerously so, Maya said. Trust me, I've read about him. Brilliant, ruthless, private. And rumored to have ties to some not-so-legal things. Lena frowned. You believe rumors? Not usually. But when people that rich and powerful make them disappear, it's usually because they're true. Lena tried to brush it off, but as they left the gallery, she caught sight of Dominic standing near the exit, talking quietly to a security guard. When his eyes met hers, a faint smile touched his lips as if he already knew she'd be thinking about him long after she walked away. And she was. 2 days later, Lena was back in her tiny apartment above the bakery, kneading dough while a crime show played in the background. The city hummed outside, alive with traffic and chatter, but inside, her world was quiet, simple, safe, predictable. That's why the knock on her door startled her. When she opened it, a man in a black suit stood there, holding a small velvet box. "Miss Hart?" he asked. "Yes. Delivery for you." He handed her the box, nodded once, and left before she could ask who it was from. Her first thought was that it was a mistake. No one sent her gifts. She opened the box and gasped. Inside lay a delicate silver pendant, shaped like a teardrop, sparkling faintly in the afternoon light. A small note was tucked beneath it. "To replace the one you lost that night. DV." Her hands trembled. She hadn't told anyone she'd lost an earring at the gala. She'd only noticed it when she'd gotten home. 100 questions raced through her mind. How did he know where she lived? Why send her something so expensive? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello. Does it fit?" The voice was smooth, familiar. "Dominic. I hope you don't mind the intrusion," he said. "I wanted to apologize for the chaos the other night." "That was my fault," she said quickly. "You didn't have to send anything." "I wanted to," he replied. "Consider it a replacement for what you lost. And an excuse to hear your voice." Her pulse quickened. "You really didn't need an excuse." A low chuckle. "Good to know." There was a pause. She heard faint background noise, car engines, maybe. "You sound busy," she said. "I always am," he said. "But never too busy to follow up on something or someone interesting." "Is this your way of saying you want to see me again?" "It's my way of asking if you'd have dinner with me." She hesitated. "I don't really do the fancy restaurant thing." "Then I'll keep it simple," he said. "Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. He didn't phrase it like a question, and somehow that made it harder to refuse. "Dominic, I'll send a car," he said gently. "You can say no when it arrives. But somehow, I don't think you will." The line went dead. Lena stood there, staring at the phone. Every part of her brain told her this was a bad idea. But deep down, a spark of curiosity or something darker whispered otherwise. That night, she placed the pendant on her bedside table. It caught the lamplight like a drop of captured fire. She lay awake for a long time, wondering what kind of man could make the world bend the way Dominic Vale did and why, of all people, he'd chosen her. Outside, the city pulsed like a living thing, restless and electric. Somewhere out there, Dominic Vale was moving through that world, powerful, untouchable, and yet, for reasons she didn't understand, his path had crossed hers. And something told her that from this point on, her quiet little life would never be the same again. The next evening, rain slicked the streets like glass. Lena stood by her window, watching headlights blur across the puddles below. The pendant Dominic had sent glimmered faintly at her throat. She told herself she wore it only because it matched her dress. Deep down, she knew it was more than that. At exactly 7, her intercom buzzed. "Miss Hart," a deep voice said through the speaker. "Your car is here." Her pulse quickened. She grabbed her purse, double-checked her reflection, and descended the narrow stairs of her apartment building. Outside, a black car waited, sleek, spotless, the kind of vehicle that didn't belong in her part of town. The driver, a man in a tailored coat, opened the door without a word. Inside, the car smelled faintly of leather and something darker, sandalwood, maybe. Dominic sat waiting. No chauffeur. No assistant. Just him. He looked effortlessly composed, wearing a black suit and an open collar shirt, a faint shadow of stubble on his jaw. His eyes met hers, calm and unreadable. "You came," he said simply. "You didn't exactly leave room to refuse," Lena replied, trying for confidence. His lips curved. I didn't think you'd want to. She sank into the seat as the car glided away from the curb. The city lights reflected off the tinted windows, a kaleidoscope of gold and white. Where are we going? She asked. You'll see. The answer should have annoyed her, but instead it intrigued her. He didn't speak again, and neither did she. Yet the silence wasn't empty, it hummed with something charged. When the car finally stopped, Lena realized they weren't at a restaurant at all. They'd arrived at a private gallery, a minimalist space tucked away on a quiet street, its facade lit by a single golden sign, Vale Atelier. You own this too? She asked as they stepped out into the cool evening air. I own most of the things I care about, he said. Come. Inside, the gallery was nearly empty. Soft light glowed across white walls lined with paintings. There was no one else there, no attendants, no crowd, no noise. He gestured toward a painting near the far wall. That one's new. Tell me what you see. She blinked. You want my opinion? Yes. She stepped closer. The painting was a swirl of deep reds and shadowed blacks, bold, violent, almost alive. It feels like someone trying to escape, she said slowly. But they can't. The colors are too heavy. When she turned, he was watching her, expression unreadable. Interesting, he murmured. Most people just say it's beautiful. Well, it is, she said. But it's also sad. His eyes softened slightly. Sadness can be beautiful too. Their gazes held. The silence stretched until she had to look away. You didn't bring me here just to analyze art, she said finally. No, he admitted. I brought you here because this place is quiet. No one interrupts here. I wanted to talk, properly. She hesitated. About what? He took a step closer, and she caught that faint scent of sandalwood again. About you. About why someone like you stands in a room full of people pretending to be seen while wishing to disappear. Her breath caught. You think you know me after one night? I notice things, he said softly. You don't like crowds. You don't like small talk. You stand near exits. And yet, you crave connection. You just don't trust it anymore. Lena's throat went dry. You make it sound like I'm an open book. Not open, he said. Just waiting for someone to read the fine print. She let out a shaky laugh. You're very sure of yourself. Confidence, he said, is just the art of pretending you're not terrified. Something about that confession, the hint of vulnerability beneath his cool exterior, disarmed her. Why me, Dominic? She asked. You could have anyone. Why chase a baker who lives in a showbox apartment? He studied her face for a long moment before answering. Because you don't want anything from me. And that makes me want to give you everything. The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. Dominic. He stepped closer, close enough that his breath brushed her cheek. Do you want to know what I see when I look at you? She nodded, barely breathing. I see someone who doesn't realize how much power she has, he said. Someone who thinks she's fragile, when really she's just unclaimed. Her heart stuttered. Unclaimed? He smiled faintly. You'll understand soon. Before she could ask what that meant, he reached for her hand, not roughly, but with quiet certainty. His skin was warm, his grip steady. I'd like to show you something else, he said. They moved deeper into the gallery, down a hallway lit by candles. At the end hung another painting, a woman standing in a field of red poppies, her face half hidden by shadow. Lena froze. The woman looked almost like her. Same dark hair, same high cheekbones, even the same tilt of the lips. Who is she? Lena whispered. For the first time that night, Dominic's expression shifted, softer, distant. Someone I used to know. He didn't elaborate, and something in his tone warned her not to press. Instead, she said quietly, she's beautiful. Yes, he murmured. She was. The past tense didn't escape her notice. He turned toward her then, eyes unreadable again. Would you like to dance? Here, she asked, half laughing. Why not? He pressed a button on his phone, and soft classical music began to echo through the room. I don't really dance, she said. Then just follow my lead. He stepped closer, one hand at her waist, the other taking her hand. His touch was firm, his movements fluid. Slowly, he began to guide her, a simple sway at first, but it felt like more. The air seemed heavier, the world smaller. She could feel the steady beat of his heart against her chest, the warmth of his body through his suit. "You're tense," he said quietly. "I'm out of practice." "Relax," he murmured. "You're safe." Somehow, she believed him. Her body loosened, her movements aligning with his until they moved together as if they'd done this 100 times before. When the song ended, he didn't release her immediately. Their faces were inches apart. "Dominic," she whispered, "what is this?" He looked at her for a long moment before saying, "A beginning." The next morning, Lena woke with the echo of his words still in her head. A beginning. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying every detail, the dance, the intensity in his gaze, the strange pull she couldn't explain. At the bakery, Maya noticed immediately. "Okay, spill," she said, catching Lena between orders. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The I met a man who's probably going to ruin my life but I can't stop smiling look." Lena rolled her eyes, trying to hide her grin. "It was just dinner." "With who?" "Dominic Vale." Maya froze, spatula in hand. "Excuse me? The Dominic Vale?" "Yes." "Oh my God. And you're alive? He didn't feed you caviar laced with gold dust or make you sign an NDA?" "None of that," Lena said, laughing. "He took me to a private art gallery." "Of course he did," Maya muttered. "Was it romantic or creepy?" Lena hesitated. "Both, maybe." Maya gave her a knowing look. "Be careful, Lena. Men like him don't do casual. They do control." "I know," Lena said softly. "But it didn't feel like that. It felt different." Famous last words, Maya warned. That evening, when Lena returned home, a package was waiting at her door. No note this time, just her name written in elegant handwriting. Inside, she found a dress, midnight blue silk, delicate and soft to the touch. At the bottom of the box, a single white card. "Tomorrow. 7. Wear this. D." Lena sat on her couch, staring at the dress. Part of her wanted to call him and tell him not to send her things. But another part, the part that had danced barefoot on a marble floor under candlelight, wanted to know what he'd planned next. The next evening, she wore the dress. The car arrived on time, but this time, Dominic wasn't inside. The driver, a broad-shouldered man named Marcus, said only, "Mr. Vale will meet you there." There turned out to be a restaurant she'd only ever seen in magazines, Amora, the kind of place where the waiting list stretched months. As she stepped out of the car, cameras flashed in the distance. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure watching from across the street, tall, shadowed. But when she blinked, he was gone. Inside, the restaurant was all soft lighting and whispered luxury. The hostess led her to a private dining room overlooking the city. Dominic stood waiting by the window, his reflection glowing in the glass. He turned when she entered and smiled. "Perfect," he said. "You keep saying that," she replied, cheeks warm. "Because it keeps being true." He pulled out her chair. "Wine?" She nodded, watching him pour a glass. Everything he did was smooth, controlled, the kind of confidence that came from always being the one in charge. As they ate, their conversation flowed easily, food, travel, art. He asked questions about her childhood, her ambitions, her dreams. He listened, really listened, in a way few people ever did. When she mentioned her wish to open her own bakery someday, he leaned forward. "Why haven't you?" "Because dreams cost money," she said. "And I barely have enough to keep up with rent." He studied her for a moment. "What if that wasn't a problem?" She laughed softly. "What, are you offering me a loan?" "No," he said. "A gift." She blinked. "Dominic. I have properties," he continued calmly. "There's a small storefront downtown. Empty. Perfect for a bakery. If you want it, it's yours." Her pulse quickened. "You can't just give someone a building." "I can. And I am." "Why?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. His gaze locked on hers. "Because I believe in potential. And because I like seeing people bloom when the world expects them to wither." It should have sounded manipulative. But somehow, it didn't. Still, she shook her head. I can't accept something like that. You already did, he said softly, eyes flicking to the necklace she still wore. Her breath hitched. That's not the same. Everything I give you means something, Lena, he said. And everything I take, I earn. The intensity of his words made her shiver. What do you want from me, Dominic? He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. Time. Trust. And honesty. Honesty? He nodded. Tell me what you're thinking right now. She hesitated, then said quietly, that you scare me. And I don't know if it's because of who you are or because of how much I want to know you. For a heartbeat, his composure cracked. His eyes darkened, and his voice dropped lower. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. She pulled her hand back slightly. And what are the stakes? He smiled faintly. You'll find out soon enough. A knock interrupted them. Marcus entered, murmuring something in Dominic's ear. Whatever it was, his expression hardened instantly. I'm sorry, he said, rising. I have to take care of something. Is everything okay? Nothing for you to worry about. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face with surprising gentleness. I'll have Marcus drive you home. Keep your doors locked tonight. Her heart skipped. Why? Because some people don't like when I take what I want, he said quietly. And right now, that's you. Before she could reply, he was gone. On the drive home, Lena couldn't shake the unease his words left behind. She pressed her fingers against the window, watching the blur of city lights. Everything about Dominic felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, thrilling, breathtaking, and one wrong step from disaster. When she reached her apartment, Marcus walked her to her door, scanning the street like a guard. Is something wrong? She asked. Just being cautious, he said. Mr. Vale doesn't take chances with what matters to him. As he left, she locked her door and leaned against it, her heart still pounding. She wasn't sure whether Dominic's world was protecting her or consuming her. But one thing she knew for certain. She was already too deep to turn back. The night Dominic disappeared after dinner, the city felt colder than usual. Rain streaked down Lena's window, tapping softly like fingers impatient for an answer. She sat on the couch, the pendant glinting faintly in the lamplight, trying to convince herself the unease pressing at her chest was only her imagination. She'd told herself this would be simple. Dinner with a wealthy man. Maybe a short, strange chapter in her life, something to look back on and laugh about one day. But nothing about Dominic Vale felt simple anymore. She couldn't stop replaying his words. Keep your doors locked tonight. It had sounded protective, but also like a warning. As if he knew something she didn't. By midnight, the city noise had thinned to the distant hum of tires on wet pavement. She made herself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and stared out. Her reflection looked pale in the glass, eyes shadowed from too little sleep. When the first knock came, soft but distinct, her cup slipped from her hand and shattered. The second knock was louder. Her heart thudded painfully. Nobody visited her this late. Maya was out of town, her neighbors were quiet people, and Dominic. No. He wouldn't knock. Who's there? She called, voice shaking. No answer. She crept toward the door, every instinct screaming not to open it. Then she heard it, the faint creak of footsteps in the hallway. Someone moving away. She dared a glance through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Her hands trembled as she slid the chain lock in place. A few seconds later, the power went out. The apartment dropped into darkness. Her breath caught. She froze, listening, heart hammering, every muscle rigid. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled, low and distant. Then came a voice, muffled through the door. Miss Hart. The voice was deep, calm, controlled. Who is it? She demanded. Marcus, it said. Mr. Vale sent me. She hesitated, torn between fear and relief. How do I know it's really you? A pause. Then, he said to tell you the gallery painting wasn't sad. It was alive. Her knees nearly gave out. She undid the lock, opened the door a crack, and Marcus stepped in, rainwater dripping from his coat. Are you hurt? he asked immediately, scanning the apartment. No, the lights went out. It's not just you, he said. There's a city block outage. But you're not staying here tonight. What are you talking about? Mr. Vale's instructions. He said if anything happened, anything at all, I was to take you to a secure location. Her pulse raced. What's going on? Marcus's jaw tightened. I don't know the details. But I do know when Mr. Vale says to move, it's for a reason. The wind howled outside. The air inside the apartment felt charged, electric with unease. Lena nodded, grabbed her coat, and followed him. The car ride was silent except for the rhythmic swipe of the wipers. City lights blurred past, hazy through the rain. Where are we going? She finally asked. To the Vale residence, Marcus said. He'll meet us there. She swallowed hard. Did he tell you what happened? Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Mr. Vale has enemies, Miss Hart. That's not news. But lately, he hesitated, choosing his words. Lately, things have been more active. Active how? He didn't answer. That silence said enough. When they reached the Vale penthouse, a gleaming tower of glass overlooking the river, security guards were already stationed by the entrance. Cameras watched from every angle. The elevator required a code and a fingerprint scan. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, polished wood, clean lines. It was beautiful, but cold, a place that looked lived in only by secrets. Marcus guided her to a seat near a vast window. Wait here. I'll let him know you've arrived. She nodded numbly. The view from the penthouse was breathtaking, the whole city stretched out below, lights glittering like scattered stars. But the beauty didn't calm her. It felt like standing on the edge of something vast and dangerous. When Dominic finally appeared, she nearly jumped. He looked different. The careful composure was still there, but beneath it was exhaustion. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie gone. A faint smear of something dark, maybe grease, maybe blood, marked his wrist. You're safe, he said first, voice low. That's all that matters. Dominic, what happened? He hesitated. Then, someone tried to get close to you tonight. Her stomach dropped. Who? I don't know yet. You said this wasn't something for me to worry about, she said, anger rising. But it's happening at my door. He met her eyes. Which is why I won't let it happen again. Do you even hear yourself? She said. You're acting like I'm a possession. He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. You're not a possession, Lena. But you are in danger because of me. That makes your safety my responsibility. She wanted to argue, but the quiet conviction in his tone left her with nothing to say. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow, Marcus will take you back when we know it's clear. She crossed her arms. And what if I say no? Then I'll station someone outside your door again, he said simply. Your choice. The tension between them was thick, electric. But beneath it, she saw something unexpected in his eyes, not arrogance this time, but guilt. Why are you doing all this? She asked quietly. Because, he said, voice rough, I've already lost too much to people who underestimated what danger looks like. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain against the glass. Finally, Dominic gestured toward the hallway. There's a guest room down the hall. Fresh clothes, food, whatever you need. Sleep if you can. Lena nodded slowly and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Lena. She looked back. He held her gaze. Don't open the door for anyone but me. The next morning, grey light filled the penthouse. Lena woke to the smell of coffee and distant conversation. For a moment, she forgot where she was, the soft bed, the silence, the sheer luxury of it. Then everything came rushing back. She found Dominic in the kitchen, speaking quietly with Marcus. When he saw her, he dismissed the bodyguard with a nod. Did you sleep? He asked. Not really. He poured her a cup of coffee and slid it across the counter. I didn't either. Are you going to tell me what's going on? She asked. He hesitated. There's a man, Vincent Caro. He's been after certain assets I control. I thought he'd stay focused on business, but it seems he's decided to make things personal. You mean me, she said flatly. He didn't deny it. Why? Because you're connected to me, he said simply. That's enough for someone like him. Lena shook her head. Dominic, this is insane. I shouldn't even be here. I know, he said. But I can't undo what's already begun. He set down his cup, studying her. There's a place I want to take you, somewhere quiet. Safer than here. You mean hide me? Call it what you like. But yes. Dominic, I can't just disappear. I have a job. I've already arranged it with your employer, he said calmly. She stared at him. You what? I made sure they understood you needed time off. Without asking me. His voice stayed calm. Lena, there are people who would use your routine against you. I won't let that happen. She turned away, anger mixing with fear. You can't keep making decisions for me. He was silent for a moment. Then quietly, you're right. But I can make sure you survive long enough to be angry with me later. The quiet place turned out to be a villa far outside the city, perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. The drive took hours. At first, Lena refused to speak. But as the landscape shifted from glass towers to winding coastal roads, her resentment began to blur into something more complicated: curiosity, unease, a reluctant awe. When they arrived, the villa took her breath away. White stone walls climbed toward the sky. Glass doors opened to sweeping terraces and gardens overflowing with roses. The ocean stretched beyond, endless and blue-gray under the morning light. This is your house, she asked. One of them, he said. But this one's different. I designed it myself. That caught her off guard. You designed this? He nodded, leading her through the entrance hall. The interior was a mix of modern and timeless: marble floors, soft colors, wide windows that filled every room with sea light. Why here? She asked quietly. Because it's far, he said. And because no one comes here unless I invite them. That afternoon, while Dominic took calls in his office, Lena wandered the villa. She found a library, a greenhouse, even a small studio filled with sketches and architectural models. One drawing caught her eye, a detailed rendering of the villa itself, signed at the corner, D. Vale, age 19. She smiled faintly. For the first time, she saw a glimpse of the man beneath the armor. When Dominic found her later, she was standing on the terrace, looking out at the horizon. You built all this when you were 19, she asked. The design, yes, he said. My father didn't approve. He thought architecture was a waste of time. What did you want? He looked out at the sea, his expression distant. I wanted to build things that lasted. He wanted me to control things that didn't. The family business, she guessed. He nodded once. He died 3 years ago. I inherited everything, including his enemies. There was silence between them for a while, filled only by the sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below. Dominic, she said finally. You could walk away from all of this. You have enough money to start over somewhere else. He smiled faintly. Money doesn't buy escape, Lena. Just better walls. That night, after dinner, the villa grew quiet. The staff had gone, leaving only the soft hum of the ocean wind through open windows. Lena sat by the fire in the main room, watching the flames shift and crackle. Dominic sat across from her, reading a file, his posture still, controlled. Do you ever stop working? She asked. He glanced up. Rarely. Doesn't that get lonely? He hesitated. Then, sometimes. She looked at him across the flickering firelight, the man who'd built empires, who commanded fear and loyalty, sitting in silence with his guard down. You don't have to protect me, she said softly. Yes, he replied, eyes steady on hers. I do. Why? He closed the file, set it aside. Because I don't want to lose you too. The honesty in his voice startled her. Too? She asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood and walked toward the window, his reflection flickering in the glass. There's more to this than you know, Lena. Things I can't explain yet. Try me. He looked back, his eyes dark and tired. Not tonight. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, faint but growing closer. As the first drops of rain began to fall against the window, Lena realized that whatever storm was coming in the sky or between them, there would be no turning back now. The next morning broke with a pale, watery sunlight over the sea. Lena woke to the scent of salt air and the distant crash of waves against rock. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the villa, the night before, and Dominic's quiet, tired eyes. She dressed simply and stepped into the hallway. The house was still, except for the soft hum of distant voices, security guards maybe, or staff. Yet the silence felt heavy, deliberate. Dominic was in the dining room, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she entered, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "You should sleep longer," he said. "You had a hard night." "I'm not good at sitting still," she said, taking a seat opposite him. He raised an eyebrow. "You'd rather go back to the city?" "Not exactly," she admitted. "But I can't hide here forever." He studied her for a long moment. "You think this is hiding?" She met his gaze. "Isn't it?" That earned her a soft chuckle. "You're braver than most people I know, Lena." "I'm just realistic." He leaned back in his chair, setting the tablet aside. Realism is often the polite cousin of fear. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, she felt the same strange tension from before, not romantic, not exactly. Something quieter. A pull between two people who had both learned to live guarded lives. "Tell me something," she said. "Why do you keep me here? You could protect me from anywhere. Why this place?" He hesitated, and when he spoke, his tone was softer than she expected. "Because here, I can control the variables. Outside, I can't." "You mean people?" He nodded. "People, information, risk. You'd be surprised how fast one photograph or overheard name can turn into leverage." She leaned forward slightly. "You don't trust anyone?" He smiled faintly. "I trust very selectively. And I'm one of those people." "Not yet," he said quietly. "But I want to be." The honesty in his voice startled her. Before she could respond, Marcus entered, silent, watchful as always. "Sir, we've got a visitor." Dominic's brow furrowed. "Who?" "Mr. Lorne." Lena glanced up sharply. "Who's that?" Dominic didn't answer immediately. His expression darkened, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of something hard behind his calm exterior. "An associate," he said finally. "One who doesn't respect boundaries." The visitor, Adrian Lorne, arrived 10 minutes later, tall, lean, expensively dressed, with a charm that felt sharpened rather than genuine. He greeted Dominic with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Dominic. You're difficult to find these days." "Some of us prefer quiet," Dominic replied. Adrian's gaze drifted past him, to Lena. "And some of us find interesting company while hiding." Lena felt the weight of his attention, uncomfortable but curious. "You didn't say you were expecting guests," she said to Dominic. "I wasn't," he replied evenly. Adrian chuckled. "Relax. I'm not here to start trouble. I only wanted to see if the rumors were true." "What rumors?" she asked before she could stop herself. "That the great Dominic Vale," Adrian said, eyes glinting, "has finally found something or someone he can't control." Dominic's jaw tightened. "Careful, Adrian." "Of course," Adrian said smoothly. "Just friendly conversation." He turned toward her, lowering his voice slightly. "You might not know what you've stepped into, Miss Hart. Dominic's world isn't built on charity or art galleries. It's built on debts, secrets, and the people who vanish when they forget who they're dealing with." Lena froze. "That's enough," Dominic said, voice sharp. Adrian only smiled. "Just a word of advice. Stay safe, Miss Hart. Some gifts come with chains you can't see." Marcus appeared in the doorway before Dominic could respond, clearly waiting for the signal. Dominic didn't hesitate. "Show him out," he said coldly. When Adrian was gone, silence filled the room, tense, brittle. Lena turned to Dominic. "Was any of that true?" He met her gaze, unflinching. "He's trying to scare you." "Is he wrong?" "About what?" "About you," she said. "About people disappearing." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "There are things I've done to survive. Things I won't justify, but I won't apologize for them either. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Later, after he'd gone to make calls, Lena walked through the villa's garden. The sea air was cold, but she needed the distance, the space to think. The world Dominic lived in was starting to take shape around her, a picture made of half-truths and careful omissions. Adrian's words lingered in her mind like a splinter. She wanted to believe Dominic meant well. He'd protected her, saved her even. But every time she thought she understood him, something shifted and she saw the outline of something darker beneath. That night, as she stood by her window watching the waves crash far below, she whispered to herself, "What have I gotten into?" The next day dawned grey and windless. The ocean stretched flat and dull, like metal under the sky. Dominic was gone when Lena came downstairs. Marcus was in the foyer, speaking quietly on a phone. When he noticed her, he ended the call and gave a polite nod. "Mr. Vale had to leave early," he said. "He'll return tonight." "Did he say where he went?" "No, Lena nodded slowly. "And I suppose I'm not supposed to go anywhere either?" "That would be best," Marcus said. "He's serious about keeping you safe." Safe. The word sounded both reassuring and suffocating now. She spent the morning wandering the villa again, drawn this time to the far end of the corridor, the one Dominic never mentioned. There, a door stood slightly ajar. Inside was a study, dimly lit, filled with files, maps, and security screens showing live feeds from around the property. And on one of the screens, her apartment. She stepped closer, her pulse quickening. The feed was from inside, not the hallway, but the living room. Her stomach dropped. He had cameras in her home. A chill spread through her chest. All this time, he'd been watching her. Protecting her, maybe, but still. She turned sharply as Marcus appeared in the doorway. "You shouldn't be in here," he said quietly. "Then tell me why this is here," she snapped. "Why he's been watching me." Marcus's face remained calm, but his voice softened. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Mr. Vale doesn't trust easily. The cameras were set up after your first meeting. He wanted to make sure no one could use you to get to him." "That doesn't make it better," she said, anger rising. "He still invaded my life." Marcus didn't argue. "You're not wrong," he said after a moment. "But understand something, Miss Hart, Dominic's not like other people. He doesn't know how to care for someone without protecting them to the point of control." "That's not protection," she said quietly. "That's fear." "Maybe both." That afternoon, she sat on the terrace, staring out at the horizon. The sky had darkened again, heavy with approaching rain. She didn't hear the footsteps until a voice said, "You shouldn't be out here alone." It wasn't Marcus. She turned sharply. A man she didn't recognize stood by the gate, dressed in black, his hair slicked from the wind. "Who are you?" she asked. "A friend," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were alert, scanning the grounds. "You don't know me, but I know who you're staying with." Her pulse spiked. "You shouldn't be here." He smiled faintly. "Neither should you. Get off this property before I call security," she said, stepping back. "Security won't help you," he said. "Not against the man who owns them." "What do you want?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a card. "My name's Elias. I worked for Dominic Vale once. I left before things got complicated." Lena didn't take the card. He set it on the stone table beside her instead. "You seem like a good person. So I'll just say this, the last woman who stayed in this house never came out." Lena's blood ran cold. "You're lying." "I wish I was," he said. "But you can find her name if you look deep enough. Clara Layton. Artist. Missing for 2 years. Her last known connection? Dominic Vale. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want to read about another name disappearing into silence," he said simply. "If you're smart, you'll leave before you become one." Then he turned and walked back through the gate, vanishing into the trees before she could think of what to say. For a long moment, Lena just stood there, staring at the card on the table. It was damp from the mist, the ink starting to blur, but the name was still clear, Elias Hartwell. She picked it up with trembling hands and shoved it into her pocket just as Marcus appeared. "Everything all right?" Miss Hart? Lena forced a smile. Fine. Just needed air. But inside, panic was rising. She needed answers. That night, Dominic returned. He looked calm, but the faint shadow of exhaustion lingered beneath his eyes. How was your day? He asked, almost casually. Quiet, she said. Until a stranger showed up. He froze. What stranger? He said his name was Elias. Said he used to work for you. Something cold flickered across Dominic's face. What did he tell you? That I should leave. His expression hardened. If he comes near you again, I'll handle it. Handle it how? She pressed. However I need to. That's not an answer, she said, voice rising. He stepped closer, eyes steady but sharp. I don't owe you every answer, Lena. Maybe not, she said. But I deserve to know if I'm living in a place built on lies. Silence fell. Rain began to patter against the windows. Finally, he said, Clara Layton was real. She was my wife. Lena's breath caught. Was. She died, he said quietly. 2 years ago. The investigation ended. But people like Elias prefer stories to truth. Why didn't you tell me? Because the past isn't what you think it is, he said. And because once people know what really happened, they stop seeing me as human. He turned away then, the conversation clearly over. But as she stood there, staring at his back, Lena felt something shift inside her, a cold seed of doubt that no amount of denial could bury. Because whatever had happened to Clara Layton, Dominic Vale wasn't just part of the story. He was the story. And if she didn't find the truth soon, she was afraid she might vanish into it too. The rain didn't stop for 2 days. It lashed the villa's windows in restless waves, a storm that refused to move on, much like the unease in Lena's chest. Dominic had left early that morning for business, his tone clipped, his eyes unreadable. He hadn't mentioned Clara again. He hadn't mentioned much of anything. Lena told herself to focus on staying calm, to ignore the shadows pressing in from every corner of this place. But every sound seemed amplified, every flicker of light a whisper of something unseen. By noon, she couldn't take it anymore. She needed answers. The house was quiet, the guards outside sheltering from the storm. Marcus had gone into town for supplies. The perfect moment, if there ever was one. She started with the study, the same one where she'd found the security screens days ago. This time, she moved quickly, methodically, searching through drawers, cabinets, anything that might hold the truth. Most of the papers were dry financial documents, contracts, property transfers, shipping manifests. But beneath a stack of files, she found a slim black folder. No label. She opened it and froze. Inside were photographs. A woman, standing by the sea, smiling at the camera. Dark hair. Intelligent eyes. A face that looked hauntingly familiar. Clara Layton. Lena turned the photos slowly, each one a fragment of a life that seemed too perfect to be real. Clara painting in a sunlit studio, Clara at a charity gala, Clara beside Dominic, his arm around her shoulders. The last photo made Lena's breath catch. It was a picture of Clara standing on the same terrace where Lena had stood 2 nights ago, the exact same spot, the same ocean behind her. Only Clara's smile didn't reach her eyes. And in the corner of the photograph, faint but visible, was a date stamp, May 14th. 2 weeks before she disappeared. Lena slipped the folder back where she'd found it, her hands trembling. Questions swirled in her mind, too many, too sharp. What had really happened to Clara Layton? And why did Dominic keep her picture here, hidden but close? Later, while exploring the east wing of the villa, Lena found a locked door. Heavy, dark wood, unlike the others. She'd noticed it before, but never tried it. This time, she turned the handle. To her surprise, it opened. The room beyond was small and dim. Dust motes drifted through a shaft of pale light from the single window. Inside stood an easel, covered with a white cloth. The air smelled faintly of turpentine and old paint. Lena's heart beat faster as she reached for the cloth and pulled it away. It was a painting, unfinished. The brushstrokes were chaotic, desperate. And the face staring back from the canvas, it wasn't Clara's. It was hers. Lena stumbled back, the breath catching in her throat. The resemblance was undeniable. The same shape of her jaw, the same grey-green eyes. She'd never sat for him, never even seen him paint. Yet here she was, half-rendered, frozen in color and shadow. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned sharply. Dominic stood in the doorway, rainwater glistening on his coat. "You weren't supposed to be in here," he said quietly. Her pulse raced. "What is this?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze flicked to the painting, then back to her. "You shouldn't go through things that don't belong to you," he said. "This isn't about your privacy," she said, anger cutting through her fear. "It's about the truth. Why is there a painting of me in this room? Why are there photos of your wife locked away like evidence?" He stepped closer, his voice low. "Because some things aren't ready to be buried." "Not yet." "That's not an answer." "No," he said, "but it's the only one you'll get tonight." She stared at him, every nerve screaming to demand more, but something in his eyes stopped her. There was exhaustion there, and something else, regret. "Clara was an artist," he said finally. "She painted here. This was her studio." "And me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why am I here?" He looked at the painting again. "Because I don't believe in coincidence." Lena stepped back, shaken. "That's not an explanation, Dominic. That's obsession." His expression hardened. "Maybe it is." He left before she could say another word, the echo of the door closing behind him sharp as a gunshot. That night, she couldn't sleep. The storm raged louder, shaking the windows. She sat on the edge of the bed, the pendant cold against her skin, the image of that half-finished portrait burned into her mind. Somewhere down the hall, she thought she heard a voice, faint, echoing through the old walls. A woman's voice. Whispering her name. "Lena." She froze. The sound faded as quickly as it came. She waited, holding her breath, but it didn't return. It had to be the storm, she told herself. Just the wind. But the villa suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a place built to keep things inside, not out. The storm broke the next morning, leaving the air heavy and grey. Dominic was nowhere to be found. Marcus said he'd gone into town, but Lena wasn't sure she believed him anymore. She needed space, so she walked the cliffs beyond the villa. The sea was calmer now, though the waves still clawed at the rocks far below. She stopped at the edge, the wind tugging at her hair, and tried to remember what normal used to feel like. But normal was gone. When she turned back toward the house, she saw Dominic waiting by the terrace. He looked different in the daylight, less untouchable, more human. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usual composure seemed thinner somehow. "I shouldn't have yelled," he said as she approached. "You didn't," she replied. "You dismissed me." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "That's probably worse." They stood in silence for a moment, the sea murmuring below. "Clara painted you," she said quietly. "Didn't she?" His eyes flicked toward her. "You saw the portrait." "I did." "It was hers," he said. "She started it before she died. I didn't have the heart to finish it." Lena blinked. "You mean Clara painted me before I even met you?" He hesitated. "That's what I can't explain." A chill ran down her spine. "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't expect anything," he said softly. "But every time I looked at that painting after she died, I saw your face. The same eyes. The same look of..." He stopped himself, searching for words. "Of wanting to escape." Lena shook her head slowly. "This is impossible." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe it's fate. I don't know anymore." They stood there for a long moment, the silence between them shifting, less tense now, more fragile. Finally, he said, "I don't want you to be afraid of me, Lena." "I'm not afraid," she said. "I'm just not sure what you are anymore." That seemed to hurt him more than any accusation could have. He looked out toward the sea, voice quiet. "I've spent years building walls. You don't survive in my world without them. But when I'm with you, they start to crack. That's dangerous for both of us." Lena felt something tighten in her chest. "Maybe that's not danger," she said. "Maybe that's just being human." He turned toward her then, and for the first time since she'd met him, He looked uncertain, like someone standing on the edge of something he couldn't control. You always say exactly what I don't want to hear, he murmured. Maybe because it's what you need to hear, she replied. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them felt charged, heavy with things neither dared name. Dominic took a step closer. You should hate me, he said quietly. You probably will, once you know everything. Then tell me, she said. I can't. Not yet. Then stop pretending I'm safe. His jaw tightened. You're safer than you think. Because you're protecting me? Because I'm keeping the people who want to hurt me from realizing you matter, he said. The words hit harder than she expected. And if they find out? His gaze darkened. Then I'll do whatever it takes. The certainty in his tone sent a shiver through her, not fear this time, but something sharper. Rain began to fall again, light but steady. They didn't move. Finally, Dominic stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. You should go inside. Why? Because if you stay, I'll say things I can't take back. She met his gaze, steady and calm. Then say them. He didn't. Not with words. Instead, he reached up and touched her cheek, carefully, like he was afraid she might break. His hand was warm against her skin, the gesture quiet but full of everything he couldn't say aloud. For a moment, the world felt still. The sea, the rain, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then he stepped back, breaking the moment like glass. This isn't the time, he said, his voice rough. There are things you don't understand yet. Then help me understand, she said. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked toward the villa, leaving her standing in the soft rain, her heart caught between trust and suspicion. That night, Lena sat alone by the fire, replaying everything in her mind, Clara's portrait, Elias's warning, Dominic's silence. Every piece of the puzzle pointed to one truth: something terrible had happened here, something Dominic didn't want her to see. But she also knew one more thing: she couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until she knew the whole story. She looked out the window at the restless sea and whispered to herself, I'll find it, Clara. Whatever he's hiding, I'll find it. Outside, lightning flashed over the waves, and somewhere deep in the villa, a door creaked open on its own. The storm, it seemed, wasn't over after all. The next few days passed in a strange rhythm: quiet mornings, cautious conversations, and a constant feeling that something unseen was watching from the corners of the villa. Dominic kept his distance. He'd vanished into long phone calls and closed-door meetings, leaving Lena to wander the echoing halls and live in the company of her own thoughts. The silence between them had changed. It wasn't the easy quiet of safety anymore, it was the heavy quiet of something waiting to break. One afternoon, she found Marcus outside on the terrace checking the perimeter cameras. He looked up when she approached. Has he said anything about leaving? She asked. No, not yet. She sighed. Do you ever question him? Marcus gave a faint smile. My job isn't to question. It's to keep people breathing. Even if that means lying for him. He hesitated. Mr. Vale isn't an easy man. But I've seen him do more to protect others than anyone I've ever worked for. Even when it costs him. Protect, or control. Marcus met her gaze steadily. In his world, they're the same thing. She turned away, unsettled by the truth in that answer. Later, she decided to visit the village a few miles down the road. She needed air and maybe distance. Dominic hadn't forbidden her from leaving the villa, and Marcus didn't stop her when she asked for the car. The town was small and quiet, the streets narrow and lined with old stone houses. The locals greeted her politely, though most of them seemed wary when she mentioned the Vale estate. She stopped in a small cafe for coffee. The barista, an older woman with kind eyes, noticed her hesitation when she ordered. You're not from here, the woman said. No, Lena admitted. I'm staying at the villa up the hill. The woman's hands froze mid-motion. The Vale house. Yes. For a moment, the woman said nothing. Then, quietly, you should be careful up there. Lena's pulse quickened. Why do you say that? The woman glanced around, lowering her voice. That place, people don't stay long. I used to see the lady who lived there always came down to the market. Sweet woman. Then one day she stopped coming. No word, no funeral. Just gone. Lena swallowed hard. Clara Layton? Yes, the woman said. She used to buy fresh flowers every week. Roses, mostly. For her studio, she said. Do you know what happened to her? The woman shook her head. No one does. The police came once, but nothing came of it. Then Mr. Vale closed the villa for almost a year. Lena thanked her quietly and left. As she walked back to the car, her thoughts spiraled. Every detail was another fracture in the picture Dominic had painted, a life of control, order, power. But beneath it was a silence that hid something much darker. When she returned to the villa, the atmosphere felt different. The staff were tense, voices hushed. Marcus was on the phone in the foyer, his expression unreadable. What's going on? She asked. He ended the call. Security breach at the docks. Nothing to worry about. Lena frowned. Docks. Business matter, he said quickly. Mr. Vale will handle it. She nodded, though unease prickled at the back of her neck. That evening, Dominic came home late. His shirt was damp from the rain, his knuckles scraped raw. He went straight to the kitchen, poured a glass of whiskey, and didn't say a word for several minutes. Rough day? She asked quietly. He gave a dry laugh. Something like that. Marcus said there was trouble at the docks. His gaze flicked toward her. You've been asking questions. I'm tired of being treated like I don't deserve answers. He set the glass down. Then here's one. The people who came after you in the city weren't random. They work for Caro. They wanted leverage. Leverage against you? Yes. She took a slow breath. And what exactly are they fighting over? Dominic's silence was answer enough. She stepped closer, voice steady. I don't care about your business. I just want to know if you killed her. He froze. The room went quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Who told you that? He asked softly. People talk, Dominic. The town remembers Clara. They remember she disappeared. And they remember you shut this place down after she did. His jaw tightened. You think I hurt her? I don't know what to think anymore. He looked at her for a long time, something sharp and wounded in his eyes. I buried the woman I loved with my own hands, Lena. The words hit her like a slap. He didn't wait for her reply. He finished his drink and walked out, leaving her alone in the echoing silence. But as she stood there, heart pounding, she couldn't shake the feeling that part of his story was still missing, and whatever he'd buried, it wasn't just grief. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The storm had passed, but her mind was louder than thunder. Every sound from the hallway made her flinch, every creak of the house felt like a whisper. Near dawn, she gave up and went to the kitchen for water. As she passed the study, a faint light flickered under the door. Someone was inside. She pushed the door open and froze. The security monitors glowed in the darkness. On one of the screens, Dominic stood outside by the cliffs, speaking to someone Lena couldn't see. His posture was rigid, his gestures sharp. Then he turned and vanished into the shadows. She stepped closer to the screens, her eyes scanning the other feeds. Most showed empty hallways, the garden, the gates. But one screen, the one marked East Perimeter, made her blood run cold. A figure was standing at the edge of the property line, just beyond the gate lights. Watching. She moved closer, squinting at the screen. The image was grainy, but she recognized the silhouette. Elias. The man who'd warned her. She grabbed a coat and slipped outside, her footsteps silent on the wet stone. The air was cold and sharp, the wind carrying the smell of rain and salt. Elias, she hissed as she approached the gate. He turned, surprised. You shouldn't be here. You came back. Why? I needed to make sure you were still alive, he said. You don't know what kind of man Vale is. I know enough. No, Elias said, stepping closer. You know what he wants you to know. You think he's protecting you? He's protecting himself. Lena folded her arms. Then tell me what really happened to Clara. Elias hesitated, glancing toward the villa. Not here. Then where? He looked at her, eyes hard with urgency. There's a storage house near the cliffs, north side. Meet me there tomorrow at noon. I'll bring proof. Proof of what? That Dominic Vale isn't the man he says he is. Before she could answer, a voice cut through the night. Step away from her. Dominic stood a few yards behind her, his expression carved from ice. Marcus was beside him, his hand hovering near his holster. Elias raised his hand slowly. I came to warn her. You came to lie, Dominic said. I worked for you. I know what's in those containers at the docks. Dominic's jaw tightened. And you know what happens to people who talk about them. Lena stepped between them. Stop it. Both of you. Elias looked at her, his voice steady. You deserve the truth, Lena. Meet me tomorrow. After that, decide for yourself who's telling the truth. Then he turned and disappeared into the darkness, moving faster than Marcus could follow. Dominic watched until he was gone, then turned to her. You're not meeting him. He said he has proof. He's trying to pull you into something dangerous. Then let me see for myself, she said, frustration spilling out. You keep telling me you're protecting me, but all you're doing is keeping me in the dark. He stared at her, silent. Finally, he said, you don't understand what's at stake. Then explain it to me. He stepped closer, his voice low but intense. The less you know, the safer you are. That's all you need to understand. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. Then maybe I don't want to be safe. For a moment, neither moved. The wind picked up, carrying the sound of the sea below. Dominic's expression shifted from anger to something like fear. Not of her, but for her. He reached out, as if to touch her shoulder, then stopped himself. Go inside, he said quietly. Please. She hesitated, then turned and walked back toward the villa. He didn't follow. The next day, Lena spent the morning pretending to read in the library, waiting for Marcus to leave for his daily rounds. When he finally drove down the hill, she slipped out the side gate and followed the path along the cliffs. The storage house was easy to find, a small, weathered building half hidden by trees. The door was unlocked. Inside, dust floated through the sunlight slanting from a high window. Wooden crates lined the walls, most stamped with codes she didn't recognize. Lena. Elias stepped out from behind one of the crates, holding a small folder. I wasn't sure you'd come. I don't have much time, she said. Show me what you have. He opened the folder and handed her a photograph. It showed a shipping manifest, Vale Holdings, dated the week Clara disappeared. Next to the cargo description, one word stood out in bold letters, classified. Elias handed her another photo, this one of Dominic and Clara at the docks, talking to a man in uniform. She found out what he was moving, Elias said. When she confronted him, she vanished. He said she drowned. But there's no death record, no body, nothing. Lena's throat tightened. You think he killed her? I think she found something she wasn't supposed to, he said. And he made sure it stayed buried. Before she could respond, a noise echoed outside, the crunch of gravel. Elias's eyes widened. They followed you. Lena turned toward the door. A shadow passed across the sunlight, and then a voice said, calm and familiar, you shouldn't have come here. Dominic stood in the doorway. Elias swore under his breath. Dominic's gaze moved from Lena to the folder in her hands. Give it to me. Lena shook her head. Not until you tell me what this is. You wouldn't understand. Then make me understand. He stepped closer, his voice sharp. That file contains information that can destroy lives, not just mine. You think you want the truth, but you don't know what it costs. Elias took a step forward. You can't control everything forever, Vale. Dominic's eyes hardened. You have 3 seconds to leave. I'm not afraid of you, Elias said. You should be, Dominic replied. The tension in the air felt electric. Before anything more could be said, Marcus appeared behind Dominic, hand on his weapon. Sir. Dominic raised a hand to stop him. Lena looked from one man to the other, her voice breaking through the silence. Enough. This isn't protecting me. This is madness. Dominic's gaze softened for a moment. You're right. But it's too late to walk away. He took the folder gently from her hands, his touch brief, then turned to Elias. Leave. Don't come back. Elias looked at Lena, his expression warning and sad. He'll never let you go, he said quietly. And if you stay, you'll end up just like her. Then he slipped out through the side door, vanishing into the trees. Dominic stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where Elias had been. Then he turned to her. You're coming back to the house, he said. Lena didn't argue. As they walked up the hill in silence, she realized something had shifted, a line crossed, a truth uncovered that couldn't be unlearned. She'd wanted to believe Dominic's world was complicated but survivable. Now, she wasn't sure she'd survive it at all. The morning after the confrontation at the storage house, the villa was unbearably still. Lena sat in the sunroom, staring at the endless sweep of ocean below. The storm had cleared, but inside her, one was still raging. Dominic hadn't spoken a word since they returned. Marcus hovered in the background, silent, uneasy. The staff moved like ghosts, careful not to disturb whatever had broken between their employer and his guest. Lena turned the pendant around her neck between her fingers, remembering the first night he'd given it to her, how safe she'd felt then, how charmed by his calm certainty. Now, she wondered if that gift had been a symbol of affection or ownership. When Dominic finally entered the room, the quiet seemed to fold around him. His presence carried weight, the air tightening the way it does before lightning strikes. I'm leaving, she said before he could speak. He stopped halfway across the room. No, you're not. Her heart thudded. You don't get to decide that. Yes, I do. His tone was quiet, but it left no room for argument. I've seen enough, she said. I met Elias, I saw those files. Whatever you're hiding, it's not protection anymore, it's a prison. He studied her, unreadable as ever. You think you've seen the whole picture? You've seen what he wants you to see. Half-truths, framed like proof. Then show me the other half. I can't. You mean you won't? His jaw tightened. There are things that can't be undone once you know them. Then maybe I'd rather know than live in your shadow. They stared at each other, the silence between them filled with everything they'd left unsaid. Finally, Dominic said quietly, you think I'm a monster. I think you're afraid, she said. Of losing control. That hit something in him, she could see it in the flicker of his expression, the faint tightening around his eyes. He exhaled slowly. You're right about that, he said. I built my life on control because chaos takes everything. I watched it happen once. I won't let it happen again. To Clara, she asked softly. He looked away. Clara was the last person I trusted. And she used it against me. Lena frowned. What does that mean? She didn't die because of me, he said. But because of what she discovered, what she tried to expose. She thought she was saving people. She didn't realize how many lives would burn if she succeeded. And you covered it up. I contained it, he said. If the world had seen what she found, it would have started a war between people who already hate each other. I did what I had to do. Lena shook her head slowly. You make it sound noble. It wasn't, he admitted. But it was necessary. His voice was calm, but his eyes were haunted. Elias was her friend, he continued. He blamed me for what happened. Maybe he's right too. But don't make the mistake of thinking he's doing this out of goodness. He's after the same files Clara had. He just wants to sell them. Lena crossed her arms. So everyone around you lies, except you. That's what power does, Dominic said quietly. It breeds truth only when it serves survival. She didn't know whether to believe him or not. He stepped closer, his voice low. If you leave now, you won't last a day before someone finds you. Elias isn't the only one watching. Caro wants what I have, and he'll use anyone to get it. Including you. Then help me trust you, she said. Stop keeping me blind. He was silent for a long time. Then, at last, he nodded. Tomorrow, he said. I'll show you everything. But once you see it, there's no going back. She met his eyes steadily. I stopped going back a long time ago. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to the sound of waves breaking far below the cliffs, thinking about Clara, about Elias, about the impossible weight in Dominic's voice when he'd said he'd contained things. Around midnight, She got up and walked quietly down the hall. The air was cold and heavy, the lights dimmed to a soft amber glow. As she passed Dominic's office, she heard faint voices, his and Marcus's. She paused, barely breathing. "She's already too deep," Marcus was saying. "She deserves to know," Dominic replied. "And if she walks out after that? You think Caro won't grab her the second she leaves?" A pause. Then Dominic's voice, lower, "Then I'll make sure she never leaves." Lena's blood ran cold. She backed away silently, her pulse pounding in her ears. Whatever he planned to show her tomorrow, it wasn't for her freedom. It was to keep her tethered forever. Dawn came pale and cold. Lena woke with a decision already made. She wasn't going to wait for Dominic to show her anything. She would find it herself, whatever proof, whatever truth, whatever secret tied Clara's death to the empire he'd built. She dressed quietly and slipped into the corridor, moving toward the west wing where his private office was locked. She'd seen him enter the security code enough times to remember the sequence, 4-1-9-7. The lock clicked open. Inside, the office smelled of cedar and smoke. The desk was immaculate, except for a small black laptop and a locked drawer. She searched until she found a set of keys in the desk's top compartment. The drawer opened with a metallic scrape. Inside were several envelopes, neatly labeled. She opened the one marked Project Mercury. The contents made her heart stop. Blueprints. Cargo manifests. Financial transfers linked to names she recognized, weapons manufacturers, offshore accounts, a government subsidiary disguised under a charity fund. This wasn't business. It was an international network, covert shipments moving under humanitarian cover. And Clara had found it. Lena stared at the documents, understanding dawning like a slow, sick wave. If Clara had tried to expose this, she hadn't just uncovered Dominic's corruption, she'd uncovered something that could implicate half the people who protected him. And for that, she'd disappeared. A sound behind her made her spin around. Dominic stood in the doorway. "Put that down," he said quietly. Her hands trembled. "You lied. I told you it would destroy lives. You said you were protecting people. You're smuggling weapons." He stepped closer, eyes dark. "Not for profit. For balance." "Balance," she said, incredulous. "You think you get to decide who deserves power?" He didn't answer. She held up the file. "Clara died because she found this, didn't she?" His expression flickered, the smallest crack. "She tried to take it public. I stopped her. I didn't know what would happen after. She trusted you. I loved her," he said, his voice breaking just slightly. "And it got her killed." Lena's throat tightened. "Then why keep doing it?" "Because if I stop now, every secret she tried to expose will be used by men worse than me. They'll kill thousands instead of one." She shook her head. "You sound like you believe that." "I do," he said simply. "And whether you believe me or not, that file can't leave this room." He reached out to take it. She backed away. "You can't keep burying everything that threatens you." His gaze softened, almost pleading. "I'm not burying it. I'm trying to keep the world from burning. By turning it into your cage," she said. "By keeping people trapped so you don't have to feel alone." The words hit something deep in him. He went still, then looked away. "You think you understand me," he said. "But you only see the version of me I let exist around you." "Then show me the rest," she said. "Everything." He hesitated, then walked to a hidden panel behind the bookshelf and pressed a button. The wall slid open, revealing a narrow corridor descending underground. "This is what Clara found," he said. "And what I couldn't let her release." She followed him down. The air grew colder, the light dimmer. The tunnel opened into a large chamber filled with screens, files, and maps connecting names, places, and events like a spiderweb. It wasn't just one operation, it was hundreds, all tied together by the Veil network. "This is what power really looks like," Dominic said quietly. "It's not about money or politics. It's about who controls the story." Lena stared at the web of information, governments, corporations, trade routes all manipulated by one unseen hand. "You built this," she whispered. "I inherited it," he said. "My father started it. I turned it into something stable. Stable, she said, voice rising. This is chaos disguised as control. People die for this. And they'll die faster if I let it fall into the wrong hands. Lena's hands tightened around the folder. You think that makes you different from them? You're just another man deciding what truth is worth keeping. He looked at her for a long time. Maybe. But now you know why you can't leave. The words chilled her. She stepped back slowly. You can't keep me here. If you walk out of this house, Caro will find you before sunset, he said. And when he does, he'll use you to destroy everything I've kept contained. That's not a threat, it's a fact. You're still deciding for me, she said quietly. Yes, he said. Because I can't lose another person to this. She met his eyes, voice steady. Then maybe the problem isn't the world, Dominic. Maybe it's you. They stood in silence, the hum of the machines filling the space. Finally, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small drive, and set it on the table. This is everything, he said. If you take it, you'll have the proof you think you want. But if you release it, people will die. Innocent people. Including you. Lena stared at it, her mind a blur of fear and disbelief. He turned toward the exit, his voice low. You have until tomorrow to decide which world you want to live in, mine, or the one that burns. Then he walked away, leaving her alone in the dim blue light of his secret empire, the choice between truth and survival heavy in her shaking hands. Lena didn't move for a long time after Dominic left her in the underground chamber. The hum of the servers filled the silence, rhythmic, hypnotic. The small flash drive on the table glinted faintly in the pale light, like something alive. If she reached for it, everything would change. If she didn't, she'd already chosen his side. She finally picked it up, closed her hand around it, and whispered to no one, I'm not yours to decide for. When she stepped back into the main house, the sun was just beginning to rise. The sea beyond the glass burned gold and crimson. For the first time, the beauty of the place felt cruel, like paint hiding cracks in a wall. Marcus was waiting near the stairs. He told me you might try to leave. I'm not trying, she said. I'm doing it. He studied her face, something unreadable passing through his eyes. You think running will fix this? It's the only thing I can still control. He didn't move aside. You don't understand what's out there, Lena. Caro doesn't just want Vale's empire. He wants the people who've seen it. Then I'll make sure no one knows I have. Marcus shook his head. You can't hide from men like that. I'm going to try. A long silence, then he stepped aside. There's an old service road behind the greenhouse. Take the second turn, stay off the main road. She hesitated. Why are you helping me? He sighed. Because sometimes protecting him means saving someone from him. Lena moved quickly, shoving a few things into a small bag, her passport, cash, the pendant, and the flash drive. She left the rest. Every step toward the side door felt heavier, as if the house itself were trying to hold her back. Outside, the air smelled of salt and rain. She followed the gravel path behind the greenhouse, the sound of her footsteps swallowed by the wind. The road curved down toward the cliffs, narrowing into a dirt trail half hidden by overgrown grass. She kept walking until the villa disappeared from view. When she finally reached the small intersection Marcus had mentioned, she stopped to catch her breath. The morning light painted everything silver, gulls wheeled high above the sea. For the first time in weeks, she felt free. A car engine shattered the moment. She spun. A black SUV came around the bend too fast, tires spraying gravel. It wasn't Marcus's car. Panic shot through her. She ran toward the trees, the bag clutched tight against her side. The SUV skidded to a halt. Doors slammed. Voices shouted. Lena Hart. Stop. She didn't. Branches tore at her arms as she pushed deeper into the woods. The voices followed, closer now. Then another sound cut through the chaos, the roar of a second engine from the opposite direction. The gunshot came a heartbeat later. Lena dropped to the ground, heart hammering. Through the trees she saw two groups of men, Dominic's security and another she didn't recognize. One of the strangers lay motionless on the road. The rest scattered when Marcus's voice bellowed an order. A hand grabbed her shoulder. She flinched, striking out, but Marcus caught her wrist. "It's me," he said. "Come on." "Who are they?" "Caro's people. We have to move." He pulled her back toward the villa as another round of gunfire echoed from the cliffs. Inside, Dominic was waiting near the entrance, his shirt streaked with dust, his expression unreadable. "You were going to run," he said. "I had to." He looked at Marcus. "You knew." Marcus met his gaze but didn't answer. Dominic turned back to her. "Caro's men intercepted the perimeter this morning. If they'd caught you." "I didn't ask for your protection," she snapped. "I asked for the truth. You got it. And look what happened." Lena clenched her fists. "You don't get to make me the reason for your choices." Something flickered in his eyes, hurt, maybe, but buried beneath steel. "You think this is about control. It's about survival. I can't let you walk into a world that would eat you alive for what you know. I'm already trapped in yours." The words hung between them like a blade. He turned away, his voice quiet. "You'll stay until this is over." "And then what?" she asked. "Then you decide if you still believe I'm the villain." That night, the storm returned. Lightning lit the sea like shattered glass, thunder rolling through the cliffs. Lena stood by her window, watching waves crash against the rocks, the flash drive still hidden in her pocket. She didn't know if she could trust Dominic. She didn't know if she could trust anyone. But she knew this: she couldn't keep living as someone else's secret. Downstairs, a door slammed. Voices shouted. She ran to the stairwell. Marcus was there, blood streaking his sleeve. "They found us," he said. "Who?" "Caro's men. 6 at least." The next few minutes blurred. Sirens, gunfire, chaos. Dominic shouting orders into a radio, staff rushing to lock down the villa. The smell of smoke and salt filled the air. Marcus pulled her toward the back exit. "There's a tunnel that leads to the cliffs. If this goes bad, you run. Don't look back." "Marcus." He gripped her shoulder. "Promise me." She nodded. The power cut out. Darkness swallowed the hall. Somewhere in the distance, glass shattered. Then Dominic's voice echoed from the corridor. "Lena." She turned toward the sound just as a figure emerged from the shadows behind him, gun raised. "Dominic," she shouted. He spun as the shot fired. The bullet grazed his shoulder. Marcus tackled the shooter before a second round could leave the barrel. Everything dissolved into motion again, shouts, more shots, the heavy crash of rain through broken windows. Dominic staggered, catching himself against the wall. "Get her out," he told Marcus. "I'm not leaving you," she said. "Yes, you are," he growled. "Go." Before she could protest, Marcus pulled her toward the tunnel entrance hidden beneath the cellar stairs. The passage was narrow, lined with stone, the air damp and cold. Behind them, the echo of chaos faded until all she could hear was the wind and her own heartbeat. When they reached the cliffs, Marcus stopped. "There's a path down to the village. Take it and don't stop." "What about you?" He smiled faintly. "Someone has to make sure they don't follow." She wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Go," he said, and turned back toward the tunnel. Lena ran into the rain. The path down the cliffs was slick and narrow. Twice she slipped, scraping her palms, but she didn't stop. The village lights flickered faintly below like distant stars. By the time she reached the outskirts, her clothes were soaked, her lungs burning. She ducked into an abandoned boathouse near the pier and collapsed against the wall. Her fingers closed around the flash drive. She still had it. Somewhere inside, she knew Dominic would come for her, but she didn't know if that meant rescue or capture. The door creaked. "Lena." She froze. Elias stepped out of the shadows, water dripping from his coat. "You made it." She exhaled in relief. "You followed me. I had people watching the roads. I saw the smoke from the villa. I thought." He stopped when he saw the blood on her sleeve. "Are you hurt?" "It's not mine." He nodded grimly. "Then we don't have much time. Caro's moving fast. Once he knows you've got the data, he'll come himself." She hesitated. "You said you wanted to expose him, to stop Dominic." I want the truth out, Elias said. Whatever it costs. She pulled the flash drive from her pocket. Then take it. He stared at it, then at her. You're giving it up that easily? I just want this to end. He reached for it, but something about the look in his eyes made her pause. What will you do with it? She asked. Release it. Every file, every name. Let the world see what men like Vale have been hiding. And what happens to the people caught in the crossfire? He hesitated. Collateral damage happens no matter who's in charge. Her stomach turned. That's exactly what he said. Before Elias could answer, the boathouse door burst open. Dominic stood framed in the rain, his arm in a makeshift sling, eyes burning with exhaustion and fury. Step away from her, he said. Elias laughed softly. Still playing the savior? I'm not playing, Dominic said. Tell her the truth, then, Elias said, turning toward Lena. Tell her that Clara didn't die in an accident. Tell her you gave the order that night. Lena's breath caught. Is that true? Dominic didn't look away. No. But I didn't stop it either. The admission hung heavy in the air. Elias smirked. There it is. The great Dominic Vale, always the martyr. Too weak to kill, too proud to confess. Dominic's voice was low. You're not here for justice. You're here for revenge. Maybe both, Elias said. He pulled a gun from his coat and aimed it not at Dominic, but at Lena. Give me the drive. Dominic stepped forward. Elias. Don't move, Elias warned. You've had your empire long enough. Time to let someone else decide who burns. Rain pounded against the roof, thunder rumbling like distant artillery. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. If you shoot me, the files die with me, she said. Maybe, Elias said. But I'll take that chance. Dominic lunged. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the small space. Wood splintered beside Lena's head. She hit the floor as Dominic tackled Elias. The gun clattered away, sliding across the boards. They struggled, rain blowing in through the broken door, both men soaked, desperate, silent but for the thud of fists and the crash of bodies. Lena scrambled for the gun, grabbed it, then froze. Lena, Dominic shouted. Go. She didn't move. Elias shoved him back, blood on his lip. You can't protect her forever. Maybe not, Dominic said, but I can stop you. The fight ended with one final blow that sent Elias crashing against the wall. He slumped, breathing but unconscious. For a moment, all that remained was the rain and Dominic's ragged breathing. He looked at her, soaked, bruised, eyes dark with exhaustion. You shouldn't have come. You followed me. I had to. He staggered, catching himself against a beam. Blood soaked through the bandage at his shoulder. Dominic, you're hurt. I've been worse. He tried to smile, failed. We can't stay here. Caro's on his way. What about him? She asked, nodding toward Elias. Marcus will pick him up, Dominic said. If he's smart, he'll disappear before I change my mind. She slipped the flash drive back into her pocket. I'm done running. He met her gaze. Then we finish this together. Outside, the storm had calmed to a steady rain. They walked along the pier toward a waiting car. The air smelled of salt and smoke. Lena glanced back once at the dark shape of the boathouse, at the faint outline of a man who'd tried to expose monsters and become one himself. Beside her, Dominic said quietly, Clara thought she could save everyone. You remind me of her. I'm not her, Lena said. I know. Then stop trying to make me fit into her ghost. He didn't reply. As the car door shut behind them and the driver pulled away, the horizon began to lighten, thin streaks of silver cutting through the clouds. For the first time in days, the world looked almost calm. But Lena knew the calm never lasted long, not in Dominic's world, and not in hers anymore. She closed her eyes, the flash drive heavy in her pocket, the sound of waves fading behind them. Somewhere ahead waited the truth and whatever came after. The drive back to the estate was silent. The road wound through the cliffs like a dark ribbon, slick from the rain. The horizon was pale, the sea glinting silver under thin morning light. Dominic sat beside Lena in the back seat, his injured shoulder wrapped hastily in gauze. His gaze stayed fixed on the horizon, jaw tight, expression unreadable. Lena held the flash drive in her hands. Its small, cold weight seemed to hum with meaning. It carried every secret, every sin, every reason she should hate him. When the car stopped at the villa, smoke still rose faintly from one of the damaged wings. Marcus met them at the door, face drawn and pale. Caro's men pulled back, he said quietly. We lost 2 guards. No word on whether they'll come again. They will, Dominic said. He won't stop until he gets the files. Marcus nodded grimly. Then we prepare. Dominic turned to Lena. Go upstairs. Get some rest. I'm not a guest here anymore, she said softly. You don't get to send me away. He hesitated, then said, fine. You should hear the rest, then. He led her down into the underground chamber again, the one with the screens and maps, the one she'd begun to think of as his cage of truths. He powered up a terminal and inserted a small key. The monitors flickered, lines of data scrolling across the glass. This is what Clara found, he said. And what I built after. She stepped closer. The screens showed spreadsheets of funds, shipments, coded names. Hidden beneath them were photographs, refugee camps, collapsed cities, crates marked for medical supplies but filled with weapons. You funded both sides of conflicts, she said. I controlled the flow, he corrected. Without me, it would have been chaos. Governments use men like Caro because they can't admit what they need done. And you call that balance? I call it necessary. Her voice was quiet. You don't believe that? He looked at her, eyes heavy with exhaustion. I don't believe in much of anything anymore. But if I didn't hold the line, Caro would. And he enjoys watching things burn. Lena studied him. So Clara tried to stop you. She believed in truth, Dominic said. She thought if the world saw what I'd done, it would fix itself. She didn't understand that it would just find new monsters. And when she wouldn't stop, she left, he said. I didn't chase her. But Caro did. She went to him for help, and he silenced her before she could speak. Lena felt the words like a punch. You knew. I found out too late. By the time I reached her, she was gone. So I did what I do best, I buried it, and built higher walls. The truth hung in the air, heavy and cold. You blamed yourself, she said softly. He gave a hollow laugh. I built an empire out of guilt. Lena stared at him, unsure whether to pity him or despise him. So what happens now? You keep hiding behind your walls until someone stronger tears them down? He turned off the monitors. Now, we end it. How? Caro will come for me. I'll make sure it ends here. Her pulse quickened. You can't mean. I do. He looked at her. You can still leave. There's a boat waiting at the South Cove. Marcus will take you. Lena shook her head. I'm not leaving you to die for this. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment you pulled me into it. Their eyes met in the dim light. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, quietly, Dominic said, you shouldn't have to carry the weight of what I've done. Then let me help you carry it, she said. That evening, as the sky bruised into dusk, the villa transformed into a fortress. Gates sealed, guards positioned, power rerouted to backup systems. Lena stayed in the study, the flash drive clutched tight. Marcus handed her a small earpiece. If anything happens to me or to him, you take that drive and go to the authorities. Tell them everything. You think they'll believe me? He gave a tired smile. They'll believe what's on that drive. The storm came with the night. Thunder cracked across the cliffs, and lightning painted the sea in shards of white light. Through the downpour, Lena saw headlights approaching the gate, 2 black cars, then 3 more. They're here, Marcus said. Dominic stood at the top of the stairs, pale but steady, eyes locked on the approaching vehicles. Open the gates. Let them come. Sir. Now. Marcus obeyed. The cars rolled into the courtyard, stopping in a neat line. Men stepped out armed, precise, their movements too confident to be amateurs. Then Caro emerged. He was tall, dressed in a dark overcoat, hair silver at the temples. His smile was thin and controlled. Dominic Vale, he called out over the rain. You always did have a flair for drama. Dominic descended the steps slowly. You should have stayed in London. Caro chuckled. And missed the chance to see you finally bleed. No, my friend. I came for what's mine. It was never yours. Caro's gaze flicked toward the villa windows. You brought her here, didn't you? The girl. The one who looks like Clara. Lena's breath caught. Caro smiled. Ah. So it's true. History really does repeat itself. Dominic's voice was sharp. You don't get to say her name. Then give me the files and I'll leave your new obsession breathing. Lena stepped into the doorway. If you want the truth, you'll have to take it. Caro's eyes widened with amusement. Brave. Or foolish. She's neither, Dominic said. She's the only one here who still has a soul. Caro tilted his head. Then let's see how far her soul stretches. He raised his hand. His men moved. Gunfire erupted. Marcus shouted an order. The guards returned fire. Windows shattered. The courtyard filled with chaos. Dominic grabbed Lena's arm, pulling her back inside. Stay behind me. I'm not hiding. Do as I say. They ducked behind the marble pillar as bullets tore through the glass. Dominic fired back, precise, controlled. The air filled with gun smoke and rain. One of Caro's men broke through the doorway. Marcus tackled him, the two crashing into the side table. Dominic. Marcus yelled. Go. Take her. Dominic pulled Lena toward the corridor. There's a tunnel through the east wing. They ran through the house, the thunder of footsteps following close behind. Lena clutched the flash drive, every heartbeat echoing with the same thought. This ends now. The tunnel led them beneath the cliffs, the roar of the storm muted but constant. Dominic moved ahead, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Blood seeped through the bandage at his shoulder, but he didn't slow down. Dominic, Lena said breathlessly. You're hurt. I'll live long enough, he said. At the end of the tunnel, the passage opened into a small concrete chamber. A single metal door led out to the cliffs. He stopped, turned to her. Give me the drive. No. Lena. I'm done being told what to do, she said, her voice trembling. If this ends, it's not because you decide it. It's because I do. He looked at her for a long moment. Then decide. Lightning flashed beyond the door, white and violent. You could give this to the press, he said quietly. You could watch the world tear itself apart and know you were the one who did it. Or you could destroy it. Let the truth die with me. And what about you? He smiled faintly. I died the night Clara did. Lena shook her head, tears blurring her vision. No. You're still trying to be the man she thought you were. Maybe. But I'll never be him again. The sound of footsteps echoed from the tunnel behind them, Caro's voice, cold and close. Dominic turned toward the noise, gun raised. Go, he said. Take the path by the cliffs. Don't look back. She didn't move. I said go. I'm not leaving you, she said fiercely. Not again. The footsteps grew louder. Dominic met her gaze, something like peace settling into his expression. Then stay behind me. The door burst open. Caro stepped through, soaked, gun drawn, eyes burning with triumph. So this is where the great Dominic Vale makes his last stand, he said. Touching. Walk away, Dominic warned. I've waited too long for that. Caro fired. Dominic lunged, the bullet grazing his side. He fired back. Caro stumbled but didn't fall. Lena ducked behind a crate, the flash drive still clutched tight. Caro aimed again at her. Give it to me, girl. Dominic moved between them. The shot echoed, loud and final. For a second, everything froze. Caro collapsed. The gun slipped from his hand, clattering on the floor. Dominic swayed, then caught himself against the wall, blood spreading across his side. Dominic. He smiled weakly. Guess I finally did one thing right. Don't say that. You're not dying here. Lena, listen. His voice was fading. The world on that drive, it's not ready. Don't let them use it. Don't let it become another weapon. She shook her head, tears spilling freely. You're coming with me. He pressed the flash drive into her palm. You have to choose. Truth or peace. You can't have both. His hand fell away. She stared at the drive, heart breaking under the weight of what it meant. The sound of the sea roared beyond the cliffs. The storm was ending, the wind softening. She stood there a long time, staring at the endless grey horizon. Then she took a breath, steady and certain, and threw the drive into the sea. It vanished beneath the waves, swallowed whole. When she looked back, Dominic's eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but still there. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please." He didn't answer, but his fingers twitched once, lightly, as if in acknowledgement. Lena sat beside him until the sun began to rise, painting the world in quiet gold. The ocean shimmered, calm again, as if nothing had ever happened. 2 days later, emergency crews reached the villa. Marcus found them on the cliffs, weak but alive. Dominic was airlifted to a private hospital. He survived, but the empire he'd built didn't. Within weeks, rumors spread of investigations, of accounts frozen, of names erased. Lena stayed long enough to see the first sunrise over the ruined estate, then left without saying goodbye. She returned to the city, opened a small bakery, and tried to forget. But sometimes, when the tide was high and the sea mist crept into the streets, she would look toward the horizon and think she saw him standing there watching, waiting, silent as the truth she'd buried. And every time she did, she would whisper the same thing to the wind. "You were right. Some secrets keep the world standing." Thank you for watching The Obsidian Promise. If you love stories where power, love, and truth collide, tap like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what moment hit you hardest. The next chapter might just start with your idea.